whole grain foods. We hear a lot about it, right? It's on the front of labels of things we buy. People are telling us to eat more whole grains. Maybe your doctor mentioned that maybe you should eat more whole grains, but why? So whole grains are a family of foods that are made up of grains that have all of their parts intact when we eat them. Some whole grain foods are things that you're probably eating already. Oatmeal, popcorn, those are whole grains naturally. Grits, they're whole grain just the way they are. But other foods like bread or rice, those things come in many different forms. Sometimes they're highly processed, and a lot of the nutrition gets stripped away from them. So that's really the benefit to looking for whole grains, is that all of the nutrition that grew on the plant in its natural state is present. And what does that mean for us? It means that whole grain foods have more fiber, more protein, and more vitamins and minerals dependent on the type of grain. Something like whole grain bread is going to have higher protein amount than white bread. Brown rice is going to have more fiber than white rice. It's generally suggested that you aim for 50% of your grains that you eat to be whole. What does that mean? Am I suggesting that you're going to have to get a calculator out and figure out a little math? Not at all. Chances are things that you're eating already are whole grains, like I mentioned. Oatmeal counts as a whole grain, a lot of crackers, grits, popcorn, granola, those are all whole grain foods. It's possible to just swap out some of the things you already eat every day for the whole grain version. So for some people, swapping out white rice for brown rice or white pasta for whole grain pasta is an easy solution. For others, there's a little bit of attachment to those foods. So I'm one of those people. I don't really like brown pasta. I really prefer the refined version. So for me, it means that I have to pay attention to putting more grains like farro or brown rice on my plate week in and week out to try to reach those goals. My kids have similar opinions. They don't really like brown rice, but they love corn tortillas and oatmeal. So that way I know we're getting a bit of whole grains in every day. So how do you know if what you're eating is a whole grain? There's really only one way to find out, and that's by reading the label of the package that it came in. Every packaged food has a nutrition label on the side, and underneath the nutrition label is the ingredients list. The first item on the list should read 100% whole grain, you fill in the blank. So it could be 100% whole wheat, 100% brown rice. Those are all the ways you'll know that it's a whole grain product that you're buying. So sometimes packaged food that has whole grain claims on the front really isn't that high in whole grains. So when you look at that label, you might see, white flour or refined flour and then a few other ingredients, and somewhere in the middle it will say whole wheat flour. That's not really going to be a significant source of whole grains for you. So you just really want to look to make sure that the first or second ingredient on the list is a whole grain product. So now I've convinced you that the nutrition in whole grain products is great. Why am I talking about it in a plant-based eating series? And that's pretty simple. When you're moving towards eating more plants, grains are a group that you're going to have to pay some attention to. They provide the base for a lot of meals that I like to cook. So if I make a rice bowl, I'm going to use brown rice. Or if I'm going to serve something over grits like collard greens and beans, that's a great complement. The thing is, whole grains have a lot of protein and a lot of fiber. And if you're starting to think about removing animal products from your diet, you're going to be looking elsewhere for protein sources. And a lot of whole grains have a surprising amount. That's something else you'll learn by reading the label. Grains are a really important part of a lot of culinary traditions, and a lot of agriculture societies were actually built around the kinds of grains that could be grown in that area of the world. From those societies, culinary traditions blossomed, and some of the dishes that we love the most came out of that process. So think about that when you're incorporating new grains. Maybe pick up brown rice noodles to try your hand at Vietnamese or Thai food, or think about corn tortillas when making tacos or tostadas. So at home, what does it look like for me trying to eat whole grains? If you open my fridge, you will always see a container of cooked brown rice. I throw this cooked rice into stir fries, or I heat it up in the microwave to make grain bowls, which makes it really easy to have a nutritious lunch or dinner on the table. Sometimes I also have things like farro, which is a grain that not everybody cooks with, but I really love it because it's good hot or cold. And for me, that makes a big difference. It means that I can scoop some into a salad of roasted vegetables and have something on the table really quickly. Another thing I often have in the fridge is oatmeal that's cooked already. So my kids love oatmeal. I often make a double batch so that I can stretch it out over a few days and I don't have to cook it twice. I get asked frequently about how to cook grains at home. And the best thing to do is to read the instructions of the package of the grain that you're cooking. You should have the amount of water and the amount of time that it'll take and whether it needs to be cooked covered or uncovered. And often those packages have really good ideas on how to use the grain after it's finished cooking.